Gary in New Jersey. Battlefield
Mayor,
of the Revolution.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. You can hear me, right?
I hear you.
Mayor,
great,
we know
Gary.
we know our exceptional republic is in great trouble. We have to keep fighting on the issues and electing the best candidates. But to save America, Mr. Mayor, we have to do more than what we've been doing. The framers of the U.S. Constitution expected power to centralize in our nation and the federal government to become, quote, oppressive and, quote, a power-abusing Congress and, quote, encroachments of the national authority. Those quotes are just some of the words of the framers of many quotes on this. They also talked about how it would be up to the people to fix it, and they gave us a solution to this, Mr. Mayor, in Article 5 of the Constitution. It's the Convention for Proposing Amendments, which in either case shall be valid to this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or conventions and 3/4 thereof. The framers put this solution into Article 5 unanimously. That's documented in James Madison's notes on September 15th, 1787, which everyone can and should look at on the Internet. If we believe in the Constitution, Mr. Mayor, then we should believe in the whole Constitution, including using the whole Constitution. We have to do this not instead of what we've been doing, but in addition to what we've been doing. And the people, Mr. Mayor, are already doing this in an organization and a movement named Convention of States. Mr. Mayor, the legislatures of 19 states have already passed uniform resolutions to do this based on 3 subjects: term limits on Congress and federal officials, fiscal restraints on the federal government, and limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. And not only the framers gave us this, Mr. Mayor, but Presidents Jefferson, Lincoln, Eisenhower, and Reagan talked about supporting this process. We have their quotes. We have the audios from Presidents Eisenhower and Reagan actually saying their words on this. And modern and present-day supporters of this include Governor DeSantis in Florida, Senator Rand Paul, Governor Mike Huckabee, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Colonel Allen West, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk. Rush Limbaugh talked about supporting the use of a convention of states process. Mr. Mayor, I want to appeal to you to join.
Can I ask you a few questions? This is something I have gotten a great deal of literature about, and I've had many talks with some of the same people you're talking about right now, and I have an open mind about it. But can I tell you my reservation? And maybe it's not a correct one, but I'm afraid we might change it the wrong way. Do you know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is that they gave us a form of government that has worked better than any form of government ever given to man. I agree with you, it is falling apart. So that's a good argument for what you're saying. Maybe it worked for a couple hundred years, but the left, and particularly the communists, have figured out how to undermine it, particularly by using this race as a way of using race to divide us. They couldn't use class, because we really are a classless society. You can be the poorest guy in the world, you become a millionaire, you're a king, right? So we're a classless society. But if we had such a convention, are you saying it would be limited to just those 3 topics?
Yes, sir. And Mr. Mayor, there's laws of agency that would rule on this, where the representatives at such a convention are agents of their state legislatures, bounding them to their instructions given, which is, by the way, that's how the 1787 convention ran. Those delegates, the framers of the Constitution, followed their instructions. That was not a runaway convention, as is a popular mythology that has been built up by opponents of this. And there have been numerous 30-something interstate conventions aside from Article 5, even before the founding era, intercolony conventions. None of those conventions ran away. They followed their instructions and their protocols routinely. The framers also built in a very high bar for this, requiring 34, in other words, 2/3 of the states, they put it as a fraction, because they knew the country would grow in states. So they gave us 2/3 of the states required to have a convention, which is now 34 states. They put the ratification requirement at 3/4, which is 38 states. That's a super majority, which only amendments with wide, broad support will pass that high requirement to become ratified.
So, for example, during a convention like this, could you move that the Supreme Court be expanded to 50 justices?
It would have to fall within the germaneness of those three subjects. So if amendments that pertain to the Supreme Court would have to fall under limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. For example, we could propose and hopefully ratify an amendment to clarify the Commerce Clause to reverse Supreme Court decisions that have undermined the Commerce Clause, such as a decision in the 1940s which gave Congress the ability to control what farmers could produce for their own consumption. The Supreme Court has undermined the Commerce Clause. It's undermined the General Welfare Clause, the Commerce Clause. So we could.
I understand. I understand the rationale for what you want to do, which is a very, very, I think, important one, and actually one that would return us closer to the intent of the founders, which is to have a limited federal government. You know, when we think of the separation of powers between the three branches of government, we think of it as sort of structural. It's not. It's a protection for our liberty. Also, the same thing with states' rights. It's a protection for our liberty so that the national government doesn't become too powerful. And it has. So I will certainly give it a lot more thought. And I welcome your calling me back to give me more information about it, okay? But understand my concern is I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yes.
My concern is they would get control of it, and we could end up with a one-party dictatorship, which is what they want. You know that, don't you? I mean, you know the Democrats want a one-party dictatorship.
And they've made a lot of progress over the last 100 years.
They sure as hell have.
But, Mr. Mayor, I think the bottom line is this is a process driven by the people, which is what the framers actually said over and over again, quote, the people talking about this, driving it. That is enormous governing power. We are building our governing muscles. I mean, the people driving this movement. Over 5 million people, Americans, support this movement. And they are working it actively as activists in this Convention of States movement in every state legislative district in this nation. Regional directors, state directors, district.
How many states so far? 19
states, and 3 more this year are close to passing. We're calling it 22 in 2022 slogan. So we're hopeful we're going to get to 22 states this year alone. We have momentum building. Former Senator Rick Santorum is our senior advisor. Mark Meckler is the co-founder and president of Convention of States.
You have very, very good, patriotic, thoughtful people. Not a one of which I would have any objection to at all. And I've kind of laid out for you what my concerns are, but I certainly don't have a closed mind to it, and would like to hear a lot more about it. There's no question we've got to do something to save our country.
Sir.
And maybe this is it. Let me take a look at it, okay, Gary? You've made the best case for it I've heard so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure.
And happy 4th.
Happy Independence Day.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks were willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.